So much talk about the AFC. People forget that the NFC has two teams on a collision course, maybe three teams. We'll talk about that more here today on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. A quick reminder, we're free to subscribe to wherever you watch your podcast or listen to your podcast. Make sure you tap into that location each and every day so you do not miss an episode. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. We'd like to thank the everydayers for joining us here on Locked On NFL, where we use the help of local experts to get you through the NFL and tell you everything that's going on. And obviously on Friday, it's always Matt Williamson here joining me in the barbershop on Locked On NFL. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to do a whip around of the league, go through all of the games that have not been played to tell you who's going to win. Matt's always good with that. McCarthy back in Dallas. Seems like that's the way this is heading and trending. The Steelers coaching question. It's always questioned, and it's the most consistent coaching we've ever had in the NFL history. But for some reason, people always sitting there talking about Mike Tomlin like he doesn't know what he's doing. And then the cream of the crop in the NFC continues to be the Eagles with the Lions and maybe the Packers and the Falcons, all of those teams sitting there on their heels. So we'll get to that in just a second. Reminding you also to go on over to Amazon Music to check Locked On NFL out over on Amazon Music. All right, my brother Matt Williamson will get started today talking about the NFC because everybody's talking so much about the AFC, and rightfully so, with Baltimore doing the damage that they've done and as of recently, and the Bills having a great season. And of course, who's going to forget about Kansas City being 15-1. It seems like everybody's forgotten about Kansas City being 15-1, but there's some pretty good teams in the NFC, and it's going to come down to the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm excited about the NFC playoff picture here. I'm hoping that the Lions' defensive injuries don't derail them because they're the most fun team. I mean, obviously, I have more thoughts on them as well, but I definitely think they're in the top tier, even as currently constructed with their injuries. I mean, it's a nightmare of an offense, and I think they have enough on defense to compete. Assuming Hurts is back for the playoffs, I don't think he's going to play this week, but I mean, a Pickett-led Eagles team isn't going anywhere. I think a Hurts-led Eagles team is the best team in the conference, though. I mean, I love how this team's playing right now. And I also think Green Bay and Minnesota are contenders, certainly could surprise or knock off one of those two. After that, I'm not really feeling the Rams or Bucks or Falcons or Washington. Maybe they win one, but I don't think they're true contenders at this point.
No, they're not true contenders. Let's get the temperatures. Let's check the temperature, if you will, from Philadelphia and listen to Lou DiBiase from Locked On Eagles.
They haven't had a bye week since week 5, but they look so fresh, and it's because unlike last year, this team is not top-heavy. They're not being carried by their stars. Sure, they have stars at almost every position. Their coaches are crushing it as well, their front office. Like, this is a full team effort. But that second layer of the roster, Gino, there's so many guys that are quietly having career years that are a big part of the success that you're just not hearing a lot of because of, for Nakobe Dean, for instance, Zach Bond's the best linebacker in football right now, so you're not hearing of him. Even though he's the second highest graded linebacker since the bye week. He actually leads the league right now in run stops. He was the highest graded player against Pittsburgh. You see like Milton Williams, Amoro Ijoma, even I would say Darius Slay is kind of in this conversation because of Q and DeJean. That second layer of the roster, they're balling so much too that your counterpunch, like does Detroit have those guys to hang with the second group?
So I got to admit something here, Matt. I picked that clip because he mentioned Zach Bond. I know that's your man. I know you have told me that Zach Bond is a really, really good player. And he also mentioned Milton Williams, who's going to probably rack up a whole boatload of money in free agency for those teams looking for a penetrating three technique because Philly probably can't re-sign him, man. But those are the types of contributions you get from teams that end up winning championships.
100%. And I guess you can call them tier 2 guys because they're not Lane Johnson or AJ Brown or, Pro Bowl after Pro Bowl and all that good stuff. I'd throw in even like Mekhi Becton and Chauncey Gardner and all those guys too. I mean, they are a deep football team. I think that's a good point. I don't know that the other teams aren't, though. Right. I mean, Lewis kind of mentioned, can the other teams keep up with that? I'm like, I hadn't thought of it from, those teams being weak in that neighborhood. Green Bay's pretty deep. I think the Lions offense is loaded. We're seeing the depth of the Lions defense as well. But no, it's certainly an Eagles' strength. There's no question. And I respect their roster building as much as any team in the league year after year.
You saw it close up and in person against Pittsburgh, who we'll mention in segment 2. Mm-hmm. And we've now seen Pittsburgh matched up against like the top tier teams from the AFC also over the last 4 weeks, and they've been losing these games. How do you compare, like when you see Pittsburgh against Baltimore and Kansas City, and just seeing Pittsburgh also? By the way, the Steelers have lost a whole bunch of games lately. Most teams would lose those games, especially when those games are being played in a row. Let's just get that out there. But with Philly, you saw Pittsburgh, you watch all of their games. You saw them side by side against the best in the AFC and the best in the NFC. How does Philly stack up physically against those AFC teams?
Yeah, it's a good barometer because I'm so dialed in with the Steelers and I know what they bring. And, for example, like I watched that Christmas game and was in awe of Mahomes. I thought he played his best game of the season, you're right. To be honest, first off, the Steelers had to play in Philly, in Baltimore, host the Chiefs in 11 days. So most teams are not going to do well in that stretch. And we'll get to them, I'm sure, in the second half. But I'll be honest, when they lost to the Eagles, I said, I think the Eagles are going to be my pick in the NFC. When they lost to Baltimore, I said, boy, these guys could win it all. And then I watched the Chiefs. I'm like,
there you go.
Shouldn't have probably forgot about the Chiefs. They're pretty good too. Yeah. So there's some recency bias there probably. I mean, if they lose the Bengals in week 18, I'm not going to say the Bengals are going to win the Super Bowl, but those 3 teams are pretty darn good.
Here's the thing, man. Then this is the beauty that most people forget. They're going to settle this stuff. These teams, they all might not play each other, but guess what? At some point, that's why I love the playoff structure of the NFL. Because there's a gauntlet you have to go through. I don't know if you ever really truly figure out who the best team is, but guess what?
Right.
It is set up this way, and whoever can walk through this gauntlet, that's why I'm so impressed by the Chiefs, because they do it over and over and over again.
It's unbelievable.
And it's like, it's just really, truly unbelievable. I put this question, I think it was Chris Carter the other day. They're going to start, if the Chiefs win it again, they're going to start saying that this is the best dynasty ever. Like the one we just saw, the Patriots did not exist. I mean, it would be great if I could take the best of that 20-year Patriot team and put it with the best of this team. Listen to me. Hear me out here. The one common denominator is there's a guy on the staff with the Chiefs that beat those Patriots twice, Steve Spagnuolo. That's amazing if you could really, really think about that mythical matchup, if you could put it together. We'll talk about the Steelers and why people question the coaching of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it's been actually one of the most consistent things of my lifetime. I'll discuss that more here today on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Game Time. Listen, man, Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better. And it's the perfect gift. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. I'm telling you, man, Game Time is never, ever, you're never too late to go to Game Time. Nobody will ever tell you that you waiting is not their emergency, because Game Time actually does specialize in last minute tickets. Also, priority picks, Game Time picks, all in pricing, seat views, the whole thing. Just take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time and download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code. I'll spell it out for you. LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, rolling along here on Locked On NFL with Matt Williamson, former NFL scout, and he knows everything about the NFL. He actually is the founder. I always got to mention this. He started Locked On NFL, so be seen on the Peacock and Williamson podcast, also with Brian Peacock, and follow him on social media so you know everything about what's going on in the NFL, especially in Pittsburgh. And that's why I want to park this for a little bit right now. Mike Tomlin is a creature of Mike Tomlin. He's a creature of habit. He does it his way. He probably is the absolute best at explaining his feelings in a way that makes you want to run through a brick wall. And a lot of people question sometimes his coaching. And I just think what it is folks, Matt, he's so consistent. They kind of, you know how you get something all the time and you just get used to it, and you're like, it's like eating steak every day. You're like, at some point, I want something else. And I think that's
filet mignon's great, but every day it gets a little old.
It gets a little old. Listen to Chris Carter talk about this loss the other day. It did not look good, obviously, but like I said, we talked about it. They were playing three of the best teams in the league in 11 days. Didn't look good against the Chiefs. Here's Chris Carter.
Hey everyone, Chris Carter here from the Locked On Steelers podcast here at Acrisure Stadium on Christmas Day, where the Steelers have taken a tough loss, 29-10 to the Kansas City Chiefs. The Steelers fall to 10-6 on a 3-game skid now, losing to the Eagles, Ravens, now Chiefs in a row. And bottom line, this team has been playing terribly for most of the past month. Deshaun Elliott calling out the team, rightfully so, saying, hey guys, you can't leave guys bleeping open. That is the bottom line for this team. They've been outclassed week after week, and that has been a bad turnaround from how well they had played for most of the season, even going 4-0 against playoff teams before this 3-game stretch. Bottom line is this team has to turn things around. You look at coaching, you look at playing all across the board, Mike Tomlin, Terrell Lawson, Arthur Smith, from Russell Wilson to the secondary to everyone involved. This team has to play better, and it knows it can play better. The question is, will they turn it around? It's a tough task. They do get a 10-day break before the Bengals, but their control of the AFC North has fallen out of their hands. They're going to need help to win it now. Bottom line, they need to turn things around. We'll talk about how they do that on the Locked On Steelers podcast.
I know they need better play out of Russell Wilson, but I think they should also think about finding 8 to 10 snaps a game for Justin Fields, because it'll throw the other team into a little bit of a tizzy.
Yeah, he's been inactive the last 2 games. I mean, he's been fighting an ab injury, and I bet that would be part of the plan, especially with the struggles they've had. Now, Wig, you could probably imagine I could do 5 lengths of podcasts on the Tomlin situation. You know, I mean, I'm 51 years old. About 49 of those years I've lived in Pittsburgh, except for when I was employed with the Browns. And I've seen 3 head coaches in my life. You know, I mean, it's a crazy situation, and I'm fortunate enough to be with the team. I live in the dorms with the players and coaches at training camp. I'm down at the facility often. And I will tell you, he is a very impressive human being. You know, I mean, people follow him. And to me, that's the greatest skill a coach can have. And I know for a fact, without divulging too many secrets, that I'll just say it's not uncommon after a game that a player from the other team will go up to Coach Tomlin and be like, I'm a free agent after the year. Will you please sign me? I really want to play for you. You know, like that happens regularly. I know this for a fact. Now, when he took over, he had never been a head coach at any level. And I thought, you know, early in his career, he was really poor at clock management, game management, situational football, when to call timeouts. And frankly, I don't think he's gotten much better. You know, I think that's a weakness to his game. I tweeted this out the other day, and it's been a trend all year that the slow starts for the Steelers have been real problematic. And if you're playing the Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, well, you're not getting out of that hole. And, you know, the Steelers defense has allowed the most first quarter points of any team in the league. So immediately everyone that hates Tomlin, that's terrible coaching. What are they doing all week? They don't prepare. And then I followed it up with, well, they allow the fewest third quarter points in the league. They're doing something at halftime. You know, they're adjusting throughout the game. You know, like there's 2 sides to all these coins. And the side that Tomlin's on is much heavier than the other side. I mean, he's a top 5 type head coach. I mean, he might not be Belichick or Reed, but he's going to the Hall of Fame and deserves every bit of it.
Yeah, he's a leader of men, man.
Yeah.
We'll get into another guy like that when we start talking about the Bears in segment 3. But here's my thing on Tomlin. Everyone leads with something. It's almost like the little protractor, right? The more you go this way, you're going to lose something on the other end. I mean, that thing doesn't stretch out. It kind of slides, right?
Uh-huh.
So I think everyone leads with something. I think with Pittsburgh, the way they want to play, which is predicated and based on the fact that they probably have to play that way.
Yeah.
I think it induces slow starts. I think they want the whole game to go slow. I think they want to go slow. I think they want you to go slow. And what happens is when they don't score and the other team scores, it looks really, really bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is that you start seeing that philosophy catch up in the third quarter, because for them, I think this is really, it's almost like, okay, we're not going to run a 100-meter sprint, but we're going to run a 1,600 meters. And we don't worry about how we start. We worry about how we finish. I think all of this stuff is predicated on how they have to play. And I think that's where people kind of lose it with Mike Tomlin. But I agree with you. I think he is a top 5 coach in the National Football League.
They're the boxer that goes the distance every time. Yeah, and maybe they lose round 1, 2, and 3, but they landed a lot of body blows, and your ribs are hurting by round 5, and then by round 10, you're screaming, Yeah. But this is the one thing I've said about Tomlin, and I think it's been true, to be very honest with you, because like when he had Ben and AB and Lev Bell, they were aggressive as could be. They did not play close to the vest. I mean, he's done this since basically Roethlisberger's elbow surgery. And what I've said is, if he has a bottom 10 quarterback, he's over 500. I mean, he's always over 500. But if he has a top 10 quarterback, he competes for Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Russ, to me, somewhere in between. We'll see. You know what I mean? I think that they're better than just sneaking in the playoffs, get blown out in round 1, but they're not the Chiefs, Eagles, and Ravens.
Right. Back over in the NFC, there's another legacy team that has a coaching issue. It looks like Mike McCarthy might be safe in Dallas, probably because once they lost Dak and started having all of these stars go down, they won some games that they probably shouldn't have. Listen to the boys from Locked On Cowboys talk about that.
If they lose all 3 of them to end the season, I think you lose a little bit of that goodwill that you kind of banked. People aren't going to remember the win against Washington earlier in the year, or the Carolina win. So
Tampa represents a good team that is not a division team, right? And that is where the Cowboys have struggled, right? Even before all this of this season, even before the injuries and all this, I think the mark against McCarthy's Cowboys has been, can they beat the upper echelon teams to get where they need to go in the playoffs? And frankly, I understand Cooper Rush is playing, but this is still another one of those games. And if you lose this game and you aren't even in the same stadium as this team, it's going to be hard to convince anybody like, hey, Mike McCarthy's coaching is the difference in getting us over the here, when we've seen to the contrary season after season after season.
So they did win that game, and they won it impressively. In fact, they might have cost Todd Bowles his job when you want to start thinking about the dynamics of them trying to keep Lee and Cohen. But Dallas did win that game, and there's a measure of, man, he's doing a good job. There's a measure of good feeling and goodwill that's now attached to Mike McCarthy that doesn't seem like he's going to be a dude that's going to lose his job.
Yeah, I lean that way as well. And I don't think anyone would fight me that he is definitely one of the 32 best head coaches on the planet.
Yes.
I mean, there aren't, I say this a lot. I'm sure we've had this conversation on a Friday or two, that there's about a dozen to 15 men right now that I know how to win in this league, that they can kind of make chicken stew out of chicken turds. I mean, like they at least can be competitive. Now, I don't know that McCarthy has a super high ceiling though. Like, can he win the whole thing? Can he out scheme the Lions and Eagles when he's a player or two short? Yes, he's one of the top 32. He's probably one of the top 15. But how high are you going to aim? And I do think the obvious thing here is it's a very top-heavy roster. what percentage of snaps have they had Dak, Parsons, and Lamb, and who's now been shut down and is fighting an injury? Like if you're going to be that top heavy and you're built that way, well, realize when they're out, you're not going to be the same. Of course, that's why they're getting the big bucks.
Mm-hmm. No, you're not going to be the same. And looking good without all of those guys only helps the cause that Jerry Jones won't make a move in the offseason.
Yeah,
I think McCarthy's good too. But being good and being good in Dallas is kind of like being good until you have to cut your mustache off and go play for the Yankees. Can you still do it? You know what I'm saying? Yep. It's just a whole different ball game. Going to talk about the Bears. They did not light the scoreboard up last night at all. And now there's even more talk about what they should do and the fact that what they've already done didn't really mean anything. We'll talk about that more here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Hillsdale College. If you're sitting around and just going through social media, wasting your time learning about nothing, well, you got to realize that time is your most precious commodity, so don't waste it just scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. You can spend it wisely to improve yourself. Study history, economics, the great works of literature, and the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Or you can find your own things to go and study, all at Hillsdale College, and that's our sponsor. Hillsdale College is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including the Constitution 101, History and Meaning of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, Land of Hope, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and a brand new documentary-style course on Marxism, Socialism, and Communism. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/locked-on to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/locked-on to register. hillsdale.edu/locked-on. All right, getting in the third segment here on Locked On NFL. Hope y'all had a very, very Merry Christmas. By the way, belated Merry Christmas, man. I didn't tell you that.
Yeah, you as well.
Yeah, and the Bears probably want not only the holiday season, but all of this stuff to get out of here. 6-3 late. I mean, no offense whatsoever. Caleb Williams is probably getting blamed for a whole bunch of stuff that's not his fault. I think Thomas Brown is a nice young coach who is probably a really good position coach or maybe even a coordinator, but I don't think he's a good head coach for Chicago. I don't like when you bring guys in and guys get to audition, but under these types of circumstances. And
too big a job. It's too big a job.
Yeah, it's too big a job. And Lauren Cox talked about it, and, it's like, okay, they fired Matt Eberflus, but nothing has changed. Here's Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears.
It turns out firing Matt Eberflus didn't solve much of anything for the Chicago Bears because they're having the same late game clock management problems under interim head coach Thomas Brown against the Seahawks they had just a month earlier with Eberflus against the Detroit Lions. I'm Lauren Cox, host of the Locked On Bears podcast. And maybe the Bears just shouldn't play on games near holidays anymore because whether it was the Thanksgiving game that got Matt Eberflus fired or now the Christmas Day after game where Thomas Brown made the exact same mistakes of letting too much time come off the clock and then wasting timeouts when the clock was already stopped, still not having any answers for the Seattle Seahawks blitz that had been coming all game long. It's the same mistakes hitting the Bears over and over again and just not learning from their own past, not learning from the thing that got the last coach fired. Well, different coach, same story, same crummy team. Only one more game to get through the rest of this year. It's going to be a tough one here for the Bears on the Locked On Bears podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast.
Yeah, I know what that sounds like because I cover the Jaguars. Lauren has had enough, and I've been there, man. I have been. I'm telling you, when you get to the point where you're like, yeah, man, it's going to be wrong. I'm telling you, I've been there before. I'm actually there right now. But look, they're going to get a new
Wait, I can't help myself. You guys must laugh when people question Tomlin. You know what I mean? Like, give me Tomlin all day long, you guys have no idea how bad you have it,
I know it, right? So speaking of which, there's been some noise. That noise is, of course, Ben Johnson and what people say that he has this interest in them. I put this to Chris Carter yesterday, and I had to bring it back up because they were playing that game last night. Seattle just went into Chicago. Seattle changed coaches, and they still have their culture. Pete Carroll built that culture. He's a culture builder, and there's been talk that that's the job that he may be interested in. So I want to ask you, what would you do as a team that needs someone to develop your quarterback?
Mm-hmm.
Would you take a chance on the dude that's never done it? Or would you go and say, give me a few years with Pete Carroll? If I take a few years of Pete Carroll, he will put us on a step and on a plateau that will allow us to continue to build.
Yeah, I understand both sides, to be honest with you. And to criticize Thomas Brown for clock management, game management is bonkers. I mean, he was a position coach 6 weeks ago. You know, I mean, I'd love to see him as an offensive coordinator because the team jumped up right away, but I don't know if he'll get that opportunity or not. Anyway, I just had to get that out. I don't know, because there's a lot of these organizations that are broken from the top. I mean, the Bears make the same mistakes over and over. They have a first-year head coach. It's terrible. They keep him around. They draft the quarterback high, and then they fire the coach, and there's more change, and there's no stability, and they're the anti-Steelers. And, you know, I mean, like, it's so a culture builder would go a long way. I do understand that. But job number one is to get Caleb Williams right. And this is another team, Wig, that I think they need more dump trucks. You know, I mean, everyone's talking about what – you know, you play in Chicago in the sloppiest field in the league and wind in the NFC North. Go draft a center and a guard and a defensive tackle and call me later. I don't care who the coach is. And I'm hoping if you come from the Lions, you would really install that too, that we want big people. We're going to start with an offensive line and the other things can fall into place. So I think I would be all over Ben Johnson. I think he's that impressive, but I understand the culture builder side of it too.
Yep, no doubt about it. Now let's do a quick rip around the league. Right. We had a few games go off all the they through the holiday season. We've already played 3 games. Starting with tomorrow, the Chargers visit New England. Ugh.
I'm a big Drake May fan, but they're in for a long day. I just think he's going to get hit a ton. Chargers should dominate this game on both lines of scrimmage.
No doubt about it. Very, very good game with a little bit of meaning. Denver going up to Cincinnati.
Yeah, I know they're a dog, but I trust the Denver coaching staff more. I think that defense can get after Burrow, and their corners can at least semi-slow down those receivers. And Cincy's defense is horrendous. I think Denver wins that game.
Yeah, they're terrible. Arizona, another game. Arizona and Los Angeles.
This time of year, as you know, is so weird because CeeDee Lamb shut down for the year. You know, like – Arizona just put both their tackles on injured reserve. Like, I mean, you don't have backups that can deal with it. I mean, the Rams need this more. I think the Rams win big. The Cardinals just don't have anything right now.
Yeah, you know, the hardest thing to find during the middle of the season is a left tackle or right.
Yeah,
they just don't walk around on the streets. Right. The Jets and the Bills. You know, it looks like a cold game in Buffalo.
Yeah, and I can see this being closer than you might think, but I mean, Rodgers has some kind of agenda right now with Adams, but I still think the Bills win.
No doubt about it. How about the Raiders? Ooh, this is a clunker. The Raiders and the Saints. Yeah, it's about.
I can't pick the Giants or Saints against anyone, so we could just skip to those 2 games if you will. I think they're the most awful teams you're ever going to see. Giants.
So that's the Raiders going to win, and then that means the Colts are going to beat the Giants. I ain't got time for that foolishness. Dallas. We talked about Dallas. They're going to Philadelphia. Probably going to play Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, and again, no Lamb, but I can see them keeping it close. I still like the Eagles to win this game in a tight one.
Nice little job by Dave Canales. We got to give him credit with the way this whole thing is gone with Bryce Young. But Bryce Young, and they got to go play Tampa, and Tampa has something to play for.
They do, but Carolina's played very competitively. Again, close game. I would take the points if you were to look at it that way, but I think the Bucs win at home. They just need it more, and they're better on both sides of the ball.
You want to talk about Clunkville? How about the Titans coming to visit Jacksonville?
Yikes. That's Clunkville. You're right.
Yeah.
I guess I'll take the Jags there at home, but I don't feel strong about that one, and probably won't spend a ton of time on that one either.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Miami at Cleveland.
I'll take the Dolphins here, but I'm assuming weather and, they played 2 cold weather games to finish their season, Miami, and that's never their specialty at all.
Never their specialty. We
Yeah.
see some changes in Miami too. Green Bay and Minnesota, that's the game of the week in my opinion.
It really is. I'm super excited about it. I actually think this is definitely a coin flip type game. Minnesota is just such a tough place to play. I'm going to take the Vikes.
No doubt about it. It's cold, but the elements won't matter because they're playing inside. The Atlanta Falcons at Washington in a game that does have some meaning late in the season.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch Penix again, and I think he can keep them competitive. It's probably a move that should have happened a while ago. I'm going to go with Atlanta. I mean, Bijan to me is a driving force that doesn't get talked about enough.
No doubt about it. And finally on Monday, a game that I know when they made the schedule, they thought this was a doozy. Detroit at San Francisco.
I think the Lions will take care of business here. I mean, the Niners haven't quit, but the Lions are clearly a superior team at this point.
Clearly a superior team. Clearly this is a superior show than anything else that you're listening to as far as podcasts, Locked On NFL. And you can get it twice with Tyler Rowland early in the morning. He'll hit you with a double shot of espresso and slide by the barbershop in the middle of the day, just like right now. And we'll do the same thing, man. We'll give it to you like you can't get it anywhere else with the use of local experts like Matt Williamson that help you understand the NFL. Thank y'all for joining us. Make sure you have a nice holiday and Happy New Year if I don't see you before then. For everybody here at Locked On Podcast Network, Matt Williamson, Tony Wiggins, we'll see you next time.